Welcome to our new episode of Speak Revenue. Remember, revenue is not a goal, it's a result. But a result of what? In this show, we turn our eyes from the output towards the inputs. We speak to sales leaders and entrepreneurs about their journeys. Join us on our quest to uncover and learn the root causes of success. Let's unpack what works for them and what didn't. Today, with our guest, Pasha Irshad. Welcome, Pasha. Great to have you.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Thanks. Awesome. Let us know. Where are you? What do you do? Why are you so successful?
The latter part I'm not so sure about, but yeah, so I'm Pasha Irshad. I'm lucky to have been in this industry probably 15 years now, and I've worked across really every facet of the customer facing department, both across B2C for a short stint and then also B2B.
Great. What's your current role?
Yeah, so my current role is co-founder of Shape and Scale. There, I'm heading up really our HubSpot implementation, onboarding, training, and
Okay.
then revenue operations. So we're really acting as a kind of external consultant to help clients get the most of their technology. On my end, that's backed by probably 8 to 9 years of performance marketing. I used to be a VP of marketing at a marketing agency where we served anywhere from faster high growth startups all the way up to the enterprise. So clients like Microsoft, Booz Allen, Samsung, and then startups like Databricks. We had a very wide range of clients. And
Okay.
then my business partner does technology PR.
All right. Awesome. So talking about the technology, but you're focusing on HubSpot, right? Are there some additional tools you are using together with HubSpot?
Yeah, I'm a HubSpot partner. I've been a HubSpot partner for
Okay.
7 years. It's my second time, so very close to becoming a gold partner. But we mainly focus on HubSpot. Now, I have a few clients that have Salesforce integrated with
Hmm.
HubSpot, and HubSpot's a platform, right? So when we think about like your choices in your tech stack, you have platforms which you're not going to change out, and you need to try to stick with it. And then you have layered on solutions like integrated apps and standalone apps, think like Calendly and or
Okay.
something like, I don't know, Databox for reporting. In all of that, we help our clients plan for their tech stack, operationalize their tech stack, call their tech stack. It just really depends on the ask and their goal.
Well, what is your ICP? Is there a specific company stage, for example, you're
Yeah,
focusing at?
that's a good question. For us, we serve anywhere from founder led all the way up
Hmm.
to Series B. And then I do
Okay.
have an enterprise client, but that's more of an anomaly. So really like anywhere from 1 to 20 million in revenue, Series A or Series B. And then usually SaaS and technology. You know, when it comes to SaaS, we apply winning by design's methodology, like trained revenue architect, which is very focused on the bow tie, right?
Yeah.
There's this idea of the funnel, which is more into the flywheel. If you follow Jocko and Winning by Design, there's the bow tie, which really looks at the point of activation and looking past the sale, because in SaaS, to be profitable, you need to have renewal, right? Like
Right.
churn isn't going to do you any good. So it's just a different way of looking at that, customer journey.
Okay. So, sounds really great as I'm a revenue architect, reading by design revenue architect as well. So there's a lot to talk about together. What is, so making things repeatable is an important part of this, but how do you advise your clients to implement the bow tie, taking HubSpot into account, especially?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the bow tie itself is a concept that most clients, I wouldn't say it's hard to grasp, but it's definitely hard
Hmm.
to implement, because if you're
Yeah.
setting up HubSpot, there's a lot of automations you need to put in place. So, you're not skipping life cycle stages. You're not skipping deal stages. It's really more
Yeah.
around life cycle stages. And there's just an architecture that you have to build in. And then there's also like there's a change management piece to getting the whole org thinking around that. So I'll be honest, as a consultant, I think it's easier to like bring that up to a client and recommend it to them than it is to actually fully implement it. With that being said, I do think it just holds a lot of weight in the way that people do business today.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. I heard that many times that people are struggling a bit with implementing this concept, but it definitely makes sense to understand it and to get the concept as a
Yeah.
whole.
I mean, like in that, you're looking at really like three things, right? You're looking at how time-based metrics, conversion-based metrics, and volume-based metrics. And I think that really everything, right? It's like, how do we convert from stage to stage? How much do we need, right? Like how much of an input do we need to achieve a result? And then how long does it take to do something? Like if you put that on a spreadsheet in columns, you start to get a sense of what you need to measure, right? It's like, hey, our sales cycle is X, and hey, it takes 15 calls to get a meeting, and it takes, we're converting like 13% from SQL to opportunity. Once you have those inputs, it's a lot easier to put in place like a model to operationalize it and solve for it, right? So you can start to identify areas in the bow tie where you're having breakdowns. And again, it doesn't have to be the bow tie. I think generally if clients understand, like the life cycle stage progression in HubSpot, they'll get a pretty good sense of where things are going wrong. MQL is not converting to SQLs. Well, maybe we have a targeting problem, right? SQL is not converting to opportunities. Maybe we have a sales enablement problem. Opportunities not, in my business, I definitely run a much smaller scale of that or just a mental framework to apply when I'm thinking about like business problems. And I think that's what Winning by Design brings to the table.
Yeah, and I think it also helps with understanding their own business model and find the right GTM strategy that fits for this model.
Yep.
Yeah, to get it aligned the right way.
Yeah, I think that's a big piece, right? Like when you think about go to market, I've seen clients that are trying to do like PLG and like they're trying to do a little bit of PLG, but then there's like this weird like enterprise motion, like really understanding what your ACV is, right? Like lower ACVs, faster sales cycles, possibility for more churn, and then obviously higher ACVs, longer sales cycle, more sales reps, could be target accounts, being able to just map that out and understand like what's best to support that is really important because that's going to set up your tech stack too, right? It's like
Right.
if you're running PLG, you need telemetry to guide some of your decisions if you move to sales assist, right? And so what do we have set up for that? Do we have custom events and custom behavioral events in HubSpot? We need HubSpot Enterprise, or do we have Pendo running, which is like is not a very easy tool to understand. There's just all these considerations I think most people probably don't take into account when they're thinking about, just the go to market. Because go to market has just become this catch all word that you see thrown everywhere. But if you think about it scientifically, it's just literally, it's like the backbone of like who you're selling to, why they care, right? Like, and then how you're going to take them along a journey.
So how do you find that out? Let's say I'm an client. How would you go step by step to find out my stage? What needs to be improved exactly throughout the buyer journey?
Yeah, I think it just depends. Usually we start with just basic business questions, right? I need to understand financials. So again, like what is your ACV? What's
Yeah.
your average sales cycle? What does your team makeup look like? Do you have a clearly defined ideal customer profile? Again, if it's founder led, that's usually going to be no because it's pre-product market fit. So I'll put that aside. But I think as you start like getting into a Series A, it's more about just like focusing, right? So how can we focus on a subset of your ICP where we have quickest time to sale and quickest time to value, and we can start to
Okay.
really prove out some of our hypotheses. And then once you get that, right, like that's when you start finding your go-to-market fit at which point usually you're able to scale and meet the market. When I say meet the market, if you have 3 to 4 competitors entering a vertical at one specific time and we're all kind of finding go-to-market fit, you got about 18 to 24 months to own that, or else you're going to be number 2 and number 3. I'm making it sound way easier than it is, obviously. That's in theory, that's the way that it works. And I would say even that 18 to 24 months maybe has been shortened at this point in time.
Okay. What do you think, or is there any, what are the clients typically really struggling with? Is there something to highlight? Is it rather go-to-market topic, marketing, sales, or customer success? Anything to highlight there, or is it different from client to client?
That's a good question. I think it differs a lot. I think in
Okay.
larger organizations, usually we struggle with like change management, right? If I'm coming
Okay.
in with an enterprise client and trying to really put in place a revenue operations framework, right? Like where trying to get a cadence of meetings between leadership from like siloed departments, that's very hard to do as an outside consultant, right? Unless you have full carte blanche access to leadership, all of that stuff. So I'd say the larger organizations, to me, it's change management. That's the hardest part. I think with smaller organizations, there's probably a lack of focus. I think
Hmm.
too much technology, too much data, just too much of everything. And I think there's this like idea that you need to bite off so much more than you can chew. I'd rather just focus on, it's like, hey, we've got 20K ACV. We've got I don't know, maybe one stage sales process. You've like an AE. We're running some inbound. It's like focus on one channel, really get your outbound down if you're doing it, like doing it the right way. And then having a clear focus and just like actually sticking with something to see if it works or not is probably going to
Okay.
benefit you more than what I see. And also I would say for smaller companies that a lot of taking the easy way out. None of my clients currently, but like I do and have seen in the past where it's like, hey, you guys are maybe doing this the way that it used to be done. We would recommend doing it this way. And they just keep doing it the way it used to be done because, again, that's easier. That could be just lead generation with content syndication, which we know just never amounts to anything. That could be with running cold outbound across your main domain, which then damages, a lot from a technical perspective. It's just
Right.
taking the easy way out.
Well, talking about larger organizations, how many employees?
Talking about 1,000 and up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. It depends on the background of the company, really, but sometimes I'm surprised how much they need to improve with regards to change management because they must have been able to work in an agile and dynamic environment as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it just depends. But like when
Mm,
you make a lot of money and you do it in spite of yourself, perhaps, like a lot of bad habits get in place, and those bad
yeah,
habits are very hard to correct after the fact, unless you have a true revenue operations function internally. Which again, I mean, if you think about revenue operations, it's kind of a new thing. So it is and it's not.
yeah, and yeah, as the bigger companies grow, the more is the structure grows just historically, and also political topics are taken into account probably.
Yep.
Let me know. Tell me about something that didn't work for you. Is there something you would like to share with the audience?
In terms of something we've applied to a client or just something that we've seen that doesn't work.
Something you've worked on yourself? Any kind of.
Yeah, like I would say things that don't work, like I said earlier, if you're thinking about lead generation, is like usually the idea of like content syndication, right? Like you're paying a company to push out your white paper and you're getting MQLs, which they're not MQLs. If
Hmm.
anything, they're just email addresses and pushing that
Yeah.
into your CRM and then having your SDRs pound them with email after email. Yeah, that doesn't work. It's never worked for me. I've never seen
Okay.
it work at any company. I'd
Okay.
actually challenge anybody that listens to this to tell me when it's worked because I'd love to
Okay.
see it. But it's still a huge cottage industry. Yeah, and
Mm.
I just that's one thing I feel pretty strongly about.
Is there any specific project you're having in mind?
Not really.
Okay.
I've worked in a lot of content syndication projects, and I don't want
Okay.
to denigrate anybody I used to work with, so I don't want to go too deep into that. But
Okay.
I would just say I've never seen it work. I just don't see it work. And
Mhm.
logically, why would it work? And in an era where buyers are more savvy than ever, like why would reading the white paper make you want to purchase a product? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and the question is, when do you realize, and how do you realize, and how much money have you wasted until then?
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. Would you say, yeah, there's any lesson learned you would like to share with the audience? Something important thing that comes to mind?
Yeah, I think the lessons learned is just, I think one thing that will never go out of style is just communication. And I think communication is so important in any organization. Again, if I look at it from the role of a consultant, your relationship with a client is only as good as the communication between the two. And I would say interorganizationally, like communication is paramount to getting things done. And today we've got global teams, we've got distributed teams, we've got Slack, we've got email. I think like being able to have a cohesive structure in place and to like communicate up, to manage up, to share findings is like really important. And as I go through some revenue operations training with somebody I respect, like I'm reminded of that. Like he talked about the rhythm of the business. Jeff Ignacio, for anyone
Okay.
that it's really like he's one of the smartest people I've met around the topic of revenue ops, revenue operations. And yeah, just thinking about that, right? Like the rhythm of the business. And that to me, that goes back to communication.
How do you achieve that?
Well, you plan for it, right? I think like
Yeah.
anything else, I think it's to like, it's having a clear plan for the quarter, for the year. And it's like, these are like smaller touch points. These are our bigger touch points, having like clearly stating up front, like what goals for meetings are, what goals for reporting is, like making sure a there's shared meaning is a big one, right? Like making sure sales and marketing both understand like what metrics they're being measured on, why it's important, MQL, SQL, whatever it may be, just like making sure everybody's on the same page. The earlier you get that done, the easier it is to like correct, like do the actual work.
Yeah, it must be part of the strategy and company culture, right?
Yep, 100%.
May I ask you what made you follow this path to found your own company at some point of time?
Yeah.
And
I've been in the marketing and advertising agency world for 15 years. And so I've always been consulting companies, just doing it behind somebody else's company. So I think a year and a half ago, my co-founder and I kind of wanted to do it for ourselves. I think the transition to more like technology focused HubSpot partner and revenue operations is that marketing is, I don't want to say I got tired of marketing, but
okay.
I think when you're delivering process to a client, I think it ends up having like, it's like teach a man to fish. I think that's what it boils down to. I think marketing for a lot of consultants and agencies just becomes, hey, we need these leads. When are you going to get them to us? You get it to us. They don't go anywhere. You've got 3 to 6 months. Sales cycle's 12.
Right.
It's just commoditized. Also, there's companies that do it like really well. I just don't think I ever really wanted to try to duplicate that because I've just done it so much and I got exhausted. So feel better on this path.
Okay. How hard was it to get the first few clients?
I
Your own
think for us,
company.
we got lucky in that we had a pretty big
Okay.
network of being in the game for so long. So that was good. But yeah, like it's a challenge. I think the hardest thing about having your own company is, that you're then becoming a seller, right? So I mean, even today, it's like you'll have a great pitch, and it's just how do you follow up? How do you create a sense of urgency without being like pushy? It's just, there are all these nuances that I know
Yeah.
I'm still learning. Sometimes I think I'm too passive. Sometimes I'm definitely too passive when it comes to sell. I'm not very like aggressive. And I think that's just my personality. And you just have to work on your system and your process around selling. It's probably been the hardest thing. I've learned a
Yeah.
ton, but it's been
Okay.
very hard.
I'm talking to several people who are thinking about doing their or starting their own consulting company or maybe starting as a freelancer. Is there anything you would like to mention that definitely has to be avoided if you think about starting your own business?
Yeah,
Hobby?
I think the things that need to be avoided are like not having a clear path. And if you're working with somebody else,
Mhm.
if you're not aligned with your co-founder on like what your vision for the business. So like, let's say that like I wanted to really scale the business and hire a bunch of people, which we could have already done. And my partner was like, I don't want to do that. That would
Okay.
have been pretty much a deal breaker. I think that like if you're a solopreneur, I think it's just understanding how lonely that path is, like going into it with eyes open. I think on LinkedIn and everything nowadays, everybody's like, oh, there's nothing wrong with working a full-time job. There's a lot of security there. So
Yeah.
I would say for somebody going into business for themselves solo, it's just like having a clear understanding of how hard it is. And then I would say for somebody starting the business with somebody else, it's like making sure you have a shared vision.
Yeah. Yeah. And you better find out as early as possible, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
It's still a pretty new company. Would you let us know what are your goals for the remaining year and maybe next year as well?
Yeah, I think for me, we are like 20 points away or something from being a HubSpot Gold partner, which for a very
Nice.
small company, like that's been a goal of ours for a while. So that for me, that's like a short-term goal. I think the other things for me are, and for my partner, are just better clarifying like our services, how we deliver those services, point where we also have productized offerings and we're able to deliver work without always being super hands-on, because I think that can bog us down. Financially, I don't know that there's any strong financial goals that we have. I think we're on a good pace for the year, and we're going to reevaluate that at the end of the year. I would say the only other thing is like starting to be a little bit more intentional with our marketing. Right now, pretty much all like LinkedIn and relationships. So next year, I think we're trying to create more content and just get out
Yeah,
there more.
great. Very nice to get those insights from a really
Yeah.
experienced person who has founded a new company just, what is it, 1.5 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah,
One and a half last, there was two. Yeah. June of 2021 at this point.
yeah, really exciting and interesting. So I think that brings us to the end of the episode, actually.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Pasha Irshad, for joining us today and sharing your valuable insights. Huge shout out to our listeners. Your support means the world to us. Remember to check out our website at speakrevenue.com for a full transcript and additional resources. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you go for your listening needs. Really helps get the word out. Also follow us on LinkedIn and Insta or on YouTube. We'll be back soon with another great guest. Until then, stay curious and keep listening.